Thank you.
Good morning, and Amy, thank you for the cue. Good morning, I'm Don Crane. I'm the president and CEO of CAPG. Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'll be brief in my opening hello and welcome and comments to start with just a little bit of context and address why we're here and what we're doing. And I think the answer lies generally in the movement from volume to value, but more specifically, macro. So the Medicare and CHIP Reauthorization Act that was passed in April of last year has effectively created a mandate that physicians and physician groups across the country move into risk. Now, we could debate that, but that's the theory that a lot of us are operating on. And it's created an entirely new climate, I think, in the United States. And in a word, I think it is all about learning, because that law and associated market dynamics and so on are asking physicians and physician groups basically to do something different, get paid entirely differently, move from a kind of a prospective system, or rather a retrospective fee-for-service system into something prospective and population-based. And while there's plenty of experience of that across the country, it's a little stale. I mean, we were in the managed care in the 90s, it went away, it's coming back in a word. So it's a time for learning. And so we're happy to be engaged in that process intramurally and extramurally. This symposium, as you know, is a part of our 2016, educational series. So there's this symposium. Amy will address these things later. Another one in, I think, September, October, thereabouts, along with a number of webinars, a couple of which have already occurred. So we're in the business now of trying to help in terms of education. So California knows a fair amount about managed care, of course, but not everything, because as we've grown and gotten to see other parts of the country, both the continental United States and some islands to the east and some islands to the west, we're finding out just how much knowledge there is in other quarters. So anyway, we are in this new world of education and learning. That's what this is all about. It's exciting for all of us. We're glad to be a part of it. We've got a great agenda for you today. We've got a great series. The faculty's going to be amazing. Excuse me for using that slightly overused word, but amazing it will be. And I think with that, I'll ask Amy to come up and tell us a little bit more. Good. And by way of introductions, for those of you who don't know Amy Nguyen, she is our Chief Medical Officer and star extraordinaire.
Thanks, Don. Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much for coming today. Really appreciate those who flew out from California, from the West Coast, and even those from the East Coast. So really appreciate you coming to spend the time with us today. So I just wanted to go over a little bit on the agenda and then to give you logistics for the rest of the day. So you have an agenda in front of you on the table. We will have 2 breaks today. The first break will occur at 11:15, a 15-minute break, and then we'll have lunch from 12:30 to 1:30, and then an afternoon break at 2:30 to 2:45. So what we wanted to, and I wanted to introduce a couple of folks on our staff to shout out. So Laura Hawkins is our Director of Member Services. She's back there. We have a CAPG table here, so with lots of information. So if you want to have questions regarding any of our regional meetings, any of our upcoming events, please don't hesitate to stop at the table and take a look at that. And then also, I wanted to thank our gold level sponsor, Cindy from Semler. So thank you very much for your support. And I would, of course, it's always the woman that has to talk about the bathrooms and the cell phones. So bathrooms are out here to your left, all the way down the hall. Please do mute your cell phones. We would appreciate that very much. There is no Wi-Fi in the room. You can get them in the lobby. So. And with that, and last but not least, slide decks. People would want to know access to slide decks and the video sessions. They will be accessible to you hopefully next week you'll receive a link to access them through your computer. It's the same registration link that you received upon signing up. So with that, again, thank you for spending the time with us today. And we really hope you enjoy the sessions, and please give us feedback at the end. There'll be surveys coming out. Okay?
So I actually have a microphone here that might even work. I'll just use it. So it's now a pleasure to kick this thing off by introducing a good friend of mine, Tom Gordon, recently having departed from Cedars-Sinai, where he was the senior vice president, which is really an understatement of a title, for their entire physician organization, the foundation, the medical group, the wraparound IPA, a stellar organization which for decades, plural, pushing more than two, pushing three, has been really a leader of coordinated care across the state, and of course is attached to the famed Cedars-Sinai Hospital, but a really first-rate organization led by a really first-rate leader who's my friend, and I'm glad to introduce you, Tom, to talk about the essentials of communication. We thought that that would be a good start for kicking off this educational session. So thank you, Tom.
Morning, everybody. It's a privilege to be here. I am a longtime CAPG and previous to CAPG, UMGA person. Prior to CAPG becoming in existence, we had a group in California called Unified Medical Groups Association. There were about 25 of us. And I was a new kid on the block in 1988, and everything I learned, it's not working. Do I need this? No, you don't need it. I'm a wandering person. Anyway, so everything I learned at UMGA and CAPG. It's not a paid political announcement, it's the truth. I got here, I didn't know anything. I teach a class at UCLA in the School of Public Health on integrated delivery networks, and everyone says, oh, Mr. Gordon, tell me the path to get to where you are. So I tell them to take out paper and pencil. I spent 15 years in the silkscreen printing business and got here by accident. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. I had a consulting firm, and a group of docs came to me called the Medical Group of Beverly Hills in the mid-'80s and said, we need help. I went in and I helped them as much as I could. The gentleman who was their CEO knew a million times more about medicine than I ever will. He was an assistant to Jim Califano in the Carter administration. Not a great manager and not great in finance, so I came in and I consulted with them. At the end of that, they asked me to come in and join them full time, and I reluctantly, now the best thing I ever did that. I didn't know a proctologist from a dentist, to be quite honest. My I did my undergraduate work at UCLA in economics, and then went on to do my graduate work in the business school. Went to my first meeting. I'm an avid reader to renegotiate our contract with the hematologist-oncologist group. Read everything I could about hemonc, and went to the meeting nervous but excited, and made a great deal. Was very excited. I knew CBCs inside out and backwards. I'm walking out of the room, and the head doctor said to me, does that price include platelets? What's a platelet? I didn't read that chapter. So I quickly ducked out of the room, told him I left it on my desk, and I've been learning ever since. And organizations like CAPG have helped me all the way through. My love in life is leadership and management. That's what I'm going to talk to you about today, because I will tell you, we built a tiny little group from nothing, and today it's something I'm rather proud of. So in 1993, merger mania hits the city of Los Angeles. Everyone's buying everyone. The theory is he or she who dies with the most managed care lives wins. So we went on a hunt. So Mr. Prisolak, Tom Prisolak, who's my boss, ordained in 1993 that Cedars-Sinai is a health system, broke us into 3 business units, teaching and research, the hospital, and the physician side. By the way, the physician side is by far the fastest growing side of Cedars-Sinai. and I couldn't be prouder of that, and I've had a lot of luck along the way. Cedars-Sinai Medical Group is my old medical group. We changed the name to take the good name of Cedars-Sinai out for a test drive. When I got here, there were 15 doctors. Today, there are 350. It has grown a lot. We've been very, very lucky. One great thing about Cedars-Sinai is they give me every penny I need to be the best that we can be. Quality comes before money, and I'm very, very proud of that. Underneath that is our IPA. There are 754 docs in our IPA. I'm going to show you a video about them in a moment. Underneath that is our third iteration at a hospitalist company. I needed to prove to the health plans that I really do want to bring down the cost of medicine. The Cedars-Sinai is regarded as an expensive Beverly Hills place, and in many ways it is, but we had to do our fair share to bring down the price. So we built our own hospitalist company, which has worked very well. I've got 42 hospitalists and 15 palliative care, we call it supportive care docs. California Heart Center is probably the luckiest business deal I ever made. We brought in a famous researcher from Johns Hopkins in cardiology who came to me 7 years ago and said, cardiology at Cedars-Sinai is great, but if you want to hit the ball out of the park, there are these 7, now 11 pre- and post-heart transplant docs headed up by Dr. John Kobashigawa. If we could somehow lure them over after 30 years at UCLA, we would own the world of cardiology. Luckily, very luckily, I did. They were unhappy, bless you, and came to us. We did 26 heart transplants a year prior to their arrival. Last year we did 132. We're the largest heart transplant center in the world. One of the great joys of my job is I get to go to the heart recipient dinner every year, and there's 500 people there in every age group you might imagine. I would sit around and meet people because I love the stories. I sat last year next to a 72-year-old woman who was a Kaiser patient, very happy at Kaiser. This is not a negative about Kaiser. I'm a big fan of theirs, and was about to die. And somebody said, you should also be on the donor list at Cedars-Sinai, and she came up and met with them. And literally, to the point where she couldn't make it from the bedroom to the bathroom. And she says to me, she got a phone call from Cedars-Sinai, we have a heart. They live in San Diego. So she says, I grabbed my husband, Bernie, and I got in the car and I drove as fast as I could. And I said, I don't understand, you can't make it from the bathroom to the bedroom, and you drove? She said, they had a heart and Bernie's a lousy driver. So I love hearing stories like this, I really do. So very, very proud of them. Largest heart transplant center in the world. Tower Hematology Oncology is a very prestigious hemonc group with their own infusion center in Radahonk Center. We are on a land grab. Lewis and Clark have nothing on me, so we were growing and I was able to bring them back home. LA Cardiology is a very fine electrophysiology and general cardiology group in downtown working by Good Samaritan Hospital. Angeles Clinic is probably the best known hemonc group in Santa Monica. We bought them and their infusion center. Curl and Job, I think you all know, the creators of Tommy John surgery, probably the biggest name in orthopedic sports medicine in our country. Do all of you know who Tommy John is? No? So Tommy John was a pitcher on the Dodgers, threw his arm out at 29 years old, could never pitch again. And these two doctors, Curlin and Job, said, we're going to rebuild your arm. Everybody laughed at them. They rebuilt the guy's arm, and he went out to pitch 11 more years, more innings pitched, and more wins than he did prior to the surgery. They've done tens of thousands of these ever since. Santa Monica Orthopedic Group, the same type of group. I call them like a sister company. They did not think out their acronym when they named themselves, so they're SMOG, so we have to change that. Valley Internal Medicine, I'm going back to the San Fernando Valley, so I bought a nephrology internal medicine group. I'm using them as our chassis. Beverly Pathology is the hospital's pathology department, and Santa Monica GI is a group of 6 of the nicest people I ever met who are gastroenterologists in Santa Monica. We bought them and we bought their procedure center. And it's just the beginning of where we're going. If you notice up here on the left side, there's a circle that says Physician Billing Services. So Mr. Prislak came to me 15 years ago and said, your docs are happy with the billing effort performed on their behalf. My faculty is pissed off. They think we're stealing money from them and putting it in the black box. So would you take over the billing for the 350 smartest people I ever met? while reimbursements are going down. But who wouldn't leap at that opportunity? So we built a billing center. I've got 275 people in another location. We do the billing on the professional fee side for my docs, all of those guys, for the faculty, and for the ER. So it's been quite a run for me. I retired from this position on December 31st. Hospital asked me to stay and consult, so I'm still deeply involved. I left for 3 reasons. One, my daughters told me that 80 hours a week at my age was stupid. Second, I have 4 grandchildren I wanted to spend a little more time with. And thirdly, my father brought me up that you could only leave when things are good. Things aren't good, they're great. So I figured I better get the hell out of here. So this is, I have a hard time explaining to people what I do for a living. Can we cut the lights down a little bit? Is that humanly possible? No? Yeah, don't worry about it. So I was trying to find a way to, because people say, I don't know, you manage doctors and there's a hospital and you got the health plan. How does that all work? So I found a video.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here, and if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know?
You see the movies, you hear the stories, I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like it in the world.
There ain't nothing like it. So bringing doctors in Beverly Hills into group models, doctors who are autonomous by their very nature, who do God's work, was not easy. It was not easy at all. So somebody told me when I got there, they said, you don't have a chance. And I said, why? And they said, because you know the difference in Beverly Hills between God and a doctor? And I said, no. He said, God knows he's not a doctor. So it was a tough start. A lot of people threw rocks at us. All those same people are trying to join us now. So we've come a long, long way. I got invited to go up on Capitol Hill in 1997 or 98, I don't remember exactly, when Hillary Clinton was leading healthcare. And this is the chart they gave us of how they had figured it out. Okay? It was absolutely unbelievable. And my theory was, you know, and we went to a lobbyist group who gave us buttons that said, it's the delivery system, stupid. And they were right. It is the delivery system. That's why all of you and the great work that CAPG is doing is where we're going and why it's going to make all the difference. So this is the 90s, okay? I want to show you the recent copy I got. Now, this has 97 problems in it. Number one, it's a Skinner box without cheese. And secondly, look where they put the patients. It's just so ridiculous. Patients supposed to be up there in the middle, and they're over there in the corner. It's about the patients, and people seem to forget that sometimes, and it drives me insane. But that's what we're up against, and it's not going to get easier. It's going to become more difficult. You know, when Medicare dropped the reimbursements for colonoscopies on January 1st of this year, I've got 13 gastroenterologists, came and said, does that mean we're taking a pay cut? Now, the answer to that can't be yes, but I've got to figure out how to make that money up somehow. But the world is changing. A lot of docs in my neighborhood are no longer accepting Medicare. And the model that's built in California around taking risk is a great model. We just have to continue to change it and update it and make it stronger and make it better. That's why leading is a big deal to me. So I'm here to talk to you about the only thing I ever thought I did well. That was being a father and running a company. I spent a lot of time with my docs, not just talking about ACOs, not just talking about macro, but talking about how you have to be responsible for your own office. You need to lead. You need to communicate. You need to plan. You need to organize. You need to staff. You need to retain people, and you need to have control over what you're doing. That's the biggest mistake I see being made, is that there isn't enough time spent on Econ 101A, how the numbers flow and what it means to each physician. And what does this mean? Wall Street Journal published a great article years ago about what do Fortune 500 companies look for in a leader. Fortune 500 companies, what do they look for in a leader? So would you like to just take one or two guesses? What do you look for in a leader? What? You don't look for anything in a leader? I see the problem in medicine. Communication. So all top 20, but not top 3. Top 3, number 1, charisma. Everybody wants to follow somebody who's charismatic. Number 2, sense of humor. And number 3, give and take. I work for Tom Prisolak, who's the greatest boss in the world. I will tell you that I've had 100 arguments with him, difficult arguments over the past almost 3 decades, and I've walked out of his office 60 times where he said, let's do it your way. So I do this a lot with the docs. We involve them in the decision-making process. I'm not here to shove it down their throat. Our big edict is stop acting like a physician management company and act like a physician support company, and they will follow, and they did. I will tell you happily that only 2 of my original docs in 1988 have left. Everyone else is still there. Not like in the movie The Firm, where if you leave, we kill you. They're here because they want to be. And I'm proud of that. So we spend a lot of time on this stuff, and I suggest you give some thought to it. I don't know if any of you read the John Kotter book, but I think he's done a better job than most in talking about leading change. So my definition of leading change is my father's definition to me as a kid. He said, if you're at a train station and one train goes by a day and it's going east, you have 2 options. You either get on that train or you spend an inordinate amount of time at the train station. And that's where medicine's going, and getting docs to understand that the old way of doing it isn't going to work anymore, that clinical transformation and total cost of care are here and important, and why is a big deal. And we spend an inordinate amount of time doing it. This John Kotter book, those 7 things, I swear to you, have made a difference for us. And I have the docs talking about it now, which means, I mean, when we started this, it was, I'm not afraid to change, but you go first. And now I got people who actually are giving this thought, and that makes me happy. So, understanding the landscape of where we're going, we live in the 2nd most highly regulated industry on the planet. Would you like to guess what number 1 is? Any guesses? Nuclear power. Who said that? You're brilliant. Everywhere I go, people said banking. I said, no, if they would have done that, we wouldn't have been in the mess we were in all these years. They forgot to regulate the banks. It is nuclear weapons. So what you do for a living is regulated just behind nuclear weapons. Tell that to your dermatologist. They'll be interested. This is a radical change in our lives, and we have to be up for it. We don't get more money for it, but we have a lot to do to make everybody happy. So in Los Angeles County, the IRS has hired 300 agents just to look at physician practices, looking for, what are they looking for? Medicare fraud. And they're finding it by the truckload. They're thinking of bringing more agents in there. It's very sad. But it's changing, it's irreversible, and anyone who doesn't get on the train is going to be left far behind. So this article comes out in Time magazine a couple of years ago. We are flying to New York, and I saved this article for the plane ride. It's 37 pages long. And I was reading it looking for one thing. Can you guess what I was looking for? Not to read the name Cedars-Sinai in this article. I was praying for that. And it wasn't in there. I was turning every page very slowly because I was scared to death. This is all true. The billing system in this country is broken, badly broken. Everyone is charging X times Medicare. Nobody pays that. And the poor 80-year-olds who get their bill, where at the very bottom in small print that says at the moment you pay nothing, they're on the phone. We get thousands of phone calls a day. We have to change the billing system in this country, and the bills are too high. 60 Minutes did a story, which I can't show you because it's too long, about a 91-year-old woman presenting at a hospital in the Midwest on her deathbed, and they brought 27 specialists to come in and see her. And I'm not saying this to be funny, it's the truth, including giving her a pap smear. Okay, 91-year-old woman getting a pap smear. It's ridiculous, and we have to do something about it, or things are just going to get worse. So, and then I get to read this in the paper all the time. All the time. You know, we're too expensive, and why would anybody go there? Top 5% in pricing. Now, I was telling a story at dinner last night that a colleague of mine, who I respect greatly, who was the #2 guy at Anthem Blue Cross years ago, who beat me up in the contract negotiation, asking me if we were on commission for MRIs because they're so expensive. And I work for one of the greatest public policy people in the country, and I was sort of offended by it, who called me the next day after we negotiated our contract and said, "Hey, Tom, I blew out my knee playing soccer. Can you get me in for an MRI?" I said, "I'm sorry, you yesterday told me that we go to MRIs too quickly, and why don't you take 2 Advil and call me in a year?" Now, I couldn't have set this up. It really happened to me. And I said, "Let me ask you something. Why do you want to come here and you don't want to send your patients here?" He said, "Because you're the best." So we face that all the time. I know we're expensive, but we have, $200 to $300 million in unfunded teaching and research, and it's a not-for-profit hospital. There isn't a Mr. Cedars putting money in their pocket. So end-of-life care, we have finally put together a palliative care team in the hospital that are spectacular. As you know, the amount of money that gets spent in the last 20% of anybody's life is a ridiculous number. And we are working hard with families and with docs. We don't know how to measure outcomes yet. So we are in the process of working with a group of consultants about how to do that. But we want to do the right thing, and that's the greatest thing about being with Cedars-Sinai. Insurance limit doctors in hospitals. So here's a letter, I think, if I got this in the right order. Nope, I'll get to that. Narrow network. So what is a narrow network? So I lost one contract in my 25-plus years, and it was because we were not efficient. So I didn't know what efficient meant. So I brought all my quality scores and all my employee satisfaction scores, longest tenured group in the state of California, and I flew up to, I will leave them nameless, and I showed them all this. I said, we give continuity of care, people stay, our employee satisfaction scores are in the 99th percentile, 11 years in a row. We send out anonymous surveys to our docs where the last question, anonymous, where the last question is, would you recommend this as a good place to work to your friends or colleagues? All but one said yes, so we got rid of him. We believe in continuity of care. I lost the contract because my hospital was expensive. That was the only thing that mattered. That was what the word efficient meant. So we're up against it every day and working to bring the price down. A health plan, Brand X, sent this out to one of my docs. Basically said, we love you, you're a good doc, we appreciate our relationship with you, but your hospital is too expensive, so we're canceling you. You can no longer be a provider for us. So I love doctors. I am on the physician side of things. Only one time in my 25 years plus at Cedars-Sinai did I get called on the carpet by one of my colleagues at a senior management meeting who said to me, whose side are you on? And I said, we're an integrated delivery network. We don't need to have sides. But since you ask, I'm on the physician side. I came here with the docs, I'm leaving with the docs. I feel sorry for our docs. They do God's work. It is tough work. The regulatory agencies live here. And this is the pressure they're under. This is what they got to live with every day, So imagine you want to be a solo practitioner and you're in Beverly Hills. So rent in Beverly Hills is $6 a square foot. Average doc probably sees 3 patients in an hour, probably gets reimbursed close to $50, and their overhead is 65%. It's a tough way to make a living, and most of them come to me with $300,000 in student loans. It's a tough way to make a living, and you may have heard housing ain't cheap. So it's a tough go, and these are the pressures they're under. So I work diligently with my management team and say, this is what those bright, wonderful people are up against every day. Your job is to make their life easier and better. Your job is to make them want to come here every day and not go anywhere else. And then if you want to compete against Kaiser, which is tough on the recruitment front because Kaiser has the greatest defined benefit retention plans for physicians I've ever seen in my life. 30 years, 50% of the average of your last 3 years of employment. Tough to beat. I can't afford to beat that. So I got to give them more. I got to give them other things. But unless my management team understands the pressure they're under, and unless we can spend enough time with the docs to tell them we love you, we care, and we understand the problem, everything else isn't going to make any difference at all. Because it is the continuity of care and the doc staying that makes the difference. So you read about hospital closures every year. They're closing. There's 5,500 hospitals in the United States. Half of them are bleeding red ink. They're shutting down. It's a new world. My wife says I have to keep working because she wants a bed. So we have to have friends so we get a bed. Our friend Ian Morrison, who's a futurist, he wrote that that there are going to only be about half as many health systems around over the next couple of years that exist today. Everyone is talking to everyone about merging. In Southern California, we have 5 major systems. We have UCLA, USC, Providence, Memorial, and us. We've all been talking to each other for years about what if and could we and can we put this together. All good intentions, all good systems, all good people. No one's made a deal yet. Okay? It doesn't mean there won't be one day, but it's pretty scattered. In the San Fernando Valley, which has a whole lot of people living in it, there are no academic medical centers. They're big enough to have 2 of them. So there's a lot of opportunity still, and I hope we all get together one day and make things happen. So the world in 2000, so I'm an economist, so I have to have graphs and tables, and I read this magazine. I don't know if any of you have ever read it, but it basically says this is the year of affiliations, partnerships, mergers, and acquisitions. Now, when you or I read the Wall Street Journal and we read about mergers and acquisitions, we don't read about healthcare until the last couple of years. We're way up there on the charts. So I'm doing what's called a land grab. This is a game I played as a kid. I loved Monopoly. I am spending all day long trading Boardwalk for Park Place. You get the railroads, I get Marvin Gardens, and we make deals. And that's what we're doing. We are expanding all over the place, as are the people that we compete with. So you've read over the past couple of years what's happening. Healthcare Partners to be bought by DaVita for $4 billion. I guess the assumption is everyone will need dialysis. I don't know, but it's amazing. Hoag and St. Joseph. So Hoag Hospital was dependent on Greater Newport Physicians, a very fine IPA in Los Angeles. They wanted to be bought out like everybody else. Hoag, I don't think, took them seriously. They left and went with the Memorial system, and now Hoag lost its feeder system, and they were forced to merge with St. Joseph's of Orange. I don't think they ever counted on that. I don't think they ever thought it could happen. It's this beautiful hospital. You get a view of the beach, and it's just a new world. Aetna, as you know, made their buy a couple years ago, Affordable Care Act, driving up healthcare, Tenet to acquire Vanguard. This is all you read every day. This was not common in healthcare for certainly most of my life. So I got to communicate the need for change. So to me, progress is a math formula. I call it at our place Gordonomics. Okay, we have to get the docs to buy in and understand, not tell them, but sell them on it. Transformation, open notes. Boy, we've had more meetings about, are you all familiar with open notes? So the doctors bring in a Jerry Seinfeld show where Elaine is in the dermatologist's office and the chart is sitting on the table and the doctor's not in it, so she thumbs through the chart and it says difficult patient. Okay, so if you watch the show, you will understand the dynamics of all that. So the doctor comes in the room and says, hi, Elaine, what can I do? And she says, I got a little rash. By the way, I noticed you said I was a difficult patient. That was the day my car broke down, and it was just having a bad day, and I had a cold, and so on. So open notes is a big deal around our place. I will tell you 3/4 of the docs don't want it, but UCLA's doing it, and Kaiser's doing it, so we have to do it to be competitive. We have to. In pediatrics, doctors have codes for themselves, their own private notes. They have a code called FLK. Do any of you know what FLK means for a pediatrician? Funny looking, you all know. So imagine a mother reading that you doctor think my kid is a funny looking. It doesn't mean your kid is funny looking. It means that there are things they have to watch out for, shape of the head or the ears or whatever it is. So open notes means all of that has to change. We keep going back to the docs for more. We need to provide them with other things because it is a hard place to be. So the changes we face. We're under consolidation. We're under siege. There will be hostile takeovers, and everyone is going to merge with everyone, including the health plans. That was always my biggest fear, having less people to fight with and to get rates from and play off each other. But it's happening. It's happening every day, so we have to learn to, we need a bigger hammer at the table to negotiate, which means when I negotiate with the 800-pound gorilla, Cedars-Sinai, and the 1,000 docs, it means something. We have a little better chance of getting better rates. If we lose our leverage, we're done. So we need it. And CAPG has helped me get that because they're out there negotiating with, fighting with, explaining to the health plans who we are and what it means. I can't tell you what a difference it's made. We've got people in Washington, we've got people in Sacramento. Nothing we would have done on our own, but it makes a difference and it makes us feel stronger, and we're proud to be members of this organization. We need economies of scale. So Tom Peters, I think, wrote in the early days that big is bad. Big is back in. Okay, you have to be big for this to work again, and that's exactly the opposite of what he wrote in his book. So challenges. John Wooden said, failure is not fatal, but failure to change might be. I think my docs have seen this 50 times. I got to get them to understand it's a new world. You got to get on board, folks, and they are. And they're wonderful people, and they are. But it is tough not to do things the way they used to. It's tough to have cookbook medicine. It's tough to have an organization that approves your request for an MRI that's outside of your system. But there's a lot of stuff being done that wasn't necessary for a long and cost too much money, so we got to make changes. So bigger done well can be better, and that's the change from the Tom Peters book. We need bigger geographic coverage. We are expanding all over the place. We bought a hospital this year. Cedars-Sinai buys a hospital every 113 years. It's the first hospital we ever bought. We bought the Marina Del Rey Hospital. Why? We built an urgent care center and a doctor's office in Culver City. We bought the Curl and Job Medical Group in Westchester. I'm putting a pack of internists in their building. There's a new area called Silicon Beach in Playa Vista in Los Angeles. Absolutely beautiful. Google is putting 8,500 people there. YouTube is moving there. TMZ is moving there. Can't wait to see them. They built the state-of-the-art IMAX theater there. The biggest Whole Foods in the country is there. So now Cedars-Sinai is there. It took 32,000 square feet, and we're going to fill it up. We need broader geographic coverage, as our competitors are doing well. Economies of scale, you're talking to an old economist who really doesn't know what he's talking about, but I believe in them. For a long time, that word was overused, and now it's not overused anymore. We need it. The ability to spread risk broadly. If you want to learn how to do that, join CAPG. I will tell you, I learned more about it there and from my colleagues. The great thing about CAPG, forget all the political stuff that we learn and the lobbyists and so on, is I've got hundreds of people to call upon, that I call upon constantly from anything, you know, about MACRA or when we did, should we do the Pioneer ACO or not, or I want to hire a dermatologist and they want $250,000 and 12 weeks off a year. What do? They're there. They are people. Somebody said to me, name the top 3 things you've learned via CAPG and your colleagues. One of them will be that misery loves company. There's always somebody out there who's fighting the same battles I'm fighting, and I learn from them. If I got nothing else but that, it would be worth the dues. Potential for population health, Knox-Keene licensing. I'm going to talk to you about that in a moment. And a bigger hammer at the table. We need a bigger hammer at the table. The more you represent, the more you're going to get, and that I can prove to you. And survival. Okay, I told you that a lot of these systems and hospitals are not going to be in business. I'm absolutely positive about it. So joining an organization like this is what's helping us stay alive and well. So vision of strategy, important. Primary agenda for boards and leaders of healthcare systems is to create clarity and establish innovative, transformational ecosystems. We hired a guy named Scott Weingarten, who was the president of Zincs, to be our chief transformation officer. One of the things he left me with 2 weeks ago is we need open access, and we do. Everybody's got open access. I don't know how we're going to get there, but we need it. The patients demand it. And we've got these minute clinics. I walked into Save-On the other day. There's a woman going to buy a card for her husband, and she has a sore throat, and she sees the minute clinic sign up. So why go to Cedars-Sinai? I got to call up and beg for an appointment. I got to drive in LA traffic, which takes 200 hours to go 12 miles. I got to pay $18 to park my car. I can go over there, and she can give me an antibiotic. So we better start thinking about what we're going to do about that, because I think it's going to make a serious dent in what we're doing. So these are the things we share with our docs. I'm big on being as transparent as I can. I spend a lot of time with our docs. We have Monday night meetings every other week, and we talk about all these things. And they have to come, okay? And I try and make it fun and interesting for them. But these are the things we talk about. My expertise is in people and culture, to get them to understand what it means to be part of a family. My definition of family is you show me a picture of Don Crane robbing a bank, I'll get on the witness stand, hand on the Bible, and tell you it ain't him. And that's the way I expect them to behave. And if they don't, we throw them out. And that I'm very serious about. But these are all the things that are high on our list. These are our Cedars-Sinai Medical Network goals for this year: total cost of care, population health, business development, affiliation strategy, patient satisfaction, engagement, and access. Now, it's only 5 items. It's really 12 million items. There's a lot to be done here. Somebody is responsible for all of these. And I'm a huge fan of compensation plans. I've studied it. I love it. And we incentivize everybody as needed. You know, we always tell people we have 3 compensation plans: last year's, this year's, and next year's. And we tailor it to meet the needs of the behavior we want to change. So if you're a plastic surgeon and you're seeing 12 million patients a day and you want to operate more than anybody else in Cedars-Sinai's history, then, and you're alienating every patient who's sitting in your lobby for 2 hours, everything is on patient satisfaction. Same with the management team. We're very serious about our goals. Hedge funds made money for a reason. They incentivized everybody and paid them less, and we're going to do more and more of that. Systems will have to move more quickly. I'm going to fly through some of these because I'm going to run out of time, and I want to pay you the respect. And then Tom Persilak introduced Cedars-Sinai Medicine. We have to get every doctor. We're a pluralistic environment. I've got 1,000 docs in the foundation. There's 350 docs on the faculty, and there's another 800 independent docs in the community who are starving, who are having a difficult time paying their bills. I got to get everybody to eat, drink, and sleep, doing the right thing in the right place at the right time. And how do we monitor that? And I swear to you, we've got Crimson systems and all sorts of other things. We are going to monitor that. And I'm going to get the hospital, and I don't want to be disrespectful to docs ever, because they're my life's blood. But if you don't do this, then you can't be on the staff, because we got to get this right, because the cost is just so out of whack, it's unbelievable. So we have all these coordinated care models being built around total cost of care. We have this collaborative effort with the medical center. Not easy to get the docs to even want to do our deal with Cedars-Sinai in the beginning. Somebody said, well, you know, they're so big and they're bureaucratic, and they hire Ernst & Young before they choose which toaster to buy for the cafeteria. So I had to work them around all that, because I believed it was the right place to be, and for us it certainly is. But we got to get the high value. We absolutely have to get there. We are in operational transformation, DEFCON 4. The value agenda, these are all the things that we go over with our docs constantly. And again, it's like advertising. You have to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it till everybody understands it, and make sure they have a comfort level with it. But we have to do all this. We can't be good. We have to be excellent. Every patient experience has to be like, Disneyland video in the Tom Peters book, okay? They're guests. They're not customers, they're guests. All the way down to the last person taking them out in the chair who has a chance to kibitz with them. That's what we do for a living. That's what this is all about. And now I've got to compete with something I never dreamt I was going to compete against in medicine, Walgreens. It's humorous to me, but it's out there, so I better take it seriously. I mean, if you would have told me 5 years ago that Kodak was going to miss digital, I'd have had you committed. There's no way on God's green earth they could have missed digital. They missed digital. I think the taxi cab people are thinking, gee, Uber, what a great idea. They're clean, it's nice, they tell you when they're going to be there, they speak English. It's a whole new system, but they're taking other industries down. We can't let the minute clinics take us down, so I just want people to be aware. So there is a new product in the marketplace today called Vivity. Vivity is a joint venture between 7 hospitals in LA County, Good Samaritan, Huntington, UCLA, et cetera, us. And it is really, you know what this means? Then you know what this is Modern Healthcare, not my favorite magazine, but do you understand what the picture is supposed to say? It's going to say that Anthem Blue Cross, who joined the 7 hospital systems, is going after price points against Kaiser. So we're the little guy. We're saying, bring it on, dude, because we're going to come out and compete against you. Affiliation strategy, why? The market is fragmented. If we don't unfragment this market, we're going to be in trouble. The investment cost, the cost of IT, which, as you know, becomes old IT in no time at all, is important. The provider networks are the name of the game. The name of the game. Fastest growing part of Cedars-Sinai and, frankly, every other health system that I've worked with. So cherish them. The advisory board said when this new Vivity idea came up, you know, when did you ever believe that a health plan, Anthem Blue Cross, and a bunch of hospitals might join together to build a network of their own? They did. Then I had to go to my board and sell it, because my board is an old, very, very smart philanthropic board, and they don't like mergers and acquisitions. It's a little foreign to them, so we had to go sell them on this idea. So this is how we sold it. I said, how'd you like to pick up the LA Times tomorrow morning and find out every major name in our neighborhood is there except ours? And they said, well, we would hate that. So I said, good news. You don't have to worry about it. But that was the sale, because that's the way it would be foreign to them. You know, is it really our business? But these are all the great players that are in, and hopefully there will be more as time goes on. So I'm big on physician engagement. I want the docs involved. I want to be transparent. The nuance to the management team is don't act like a physician management company. Act like a physician support company, because that's who we are. So sometimes you have to start by acknowledging how crazy this all is. This is how crazy our industry is. Enjoy this.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event.
Healthcare genius.
Let's get ready to rumble!
I've been hearing a lot of talk lately, and I don't know if this is more prevalent in LA than other places, but I feel like it probably is, but there's a small but still sizable group of people who are choosing not to vaccinate their children. Here in LA, there are schools in which 20% of the students aren't vaccinated because parents here are more scared of gluten than they are of smallpox. And as a result, we now have measles again. We've got measles. I want to say something about that. I know if you're one of these anti-vaccine people, you probably aren't going to take medical advice from talk show hosts, and I don't expect you to. I wouldn't either. But I would expect you to take medical advice from almost every doctor in the world. See, the thing about doctors is they didn't learn about the human body from their friend's Facebook page. They went to medical school where they studied all sorts of amazing things, like how to magically prevent children from contracting horrible diseases by giving them a little shot. You know those little shots of Botox? Which is botulism, by the way. You get in your face to make your head look smooth and your eyes look crazy? A little shot like that, and poof, polio is gone. But some people do not buy into that because they did a Google search and Jenny McCarthy popped up and she had clothes on, so they listened to what she had to say and decided not to vaccinate their kids. Now, and by the way, I want to say, this would all be okay if your kids were the only ones affected. They're your kids, but they're not, because unvaccinated kids put all children in danger, especially babies who are too young to get the vaccination shot. But of course, that's according to doctors, so, take that with a grain of salt. Now, some people are saying kids who aren't vaccinated shouldn't be allowed to go to school or daycare or go to public places, but here's how I think it should go. If you are one of those people who knows more than doctors, that's fine, no vaccinations, but you're not allowed to go to the doctor anymore. Okay? Why would you even want to go to a doctor who knows less than you do? So, if you fall and you cut your head open, you will not be admitted to the emergency room. Stay at home, find that sewing kit you stole from the Marriott, and stitch it up yourself, Doc. The doctor will see your number.
So that's the world we live in. We actually have people who have come to us and have seen this and ask us about it. Okay? People are on Facebook, people are Googling, people are, my God, the things you read on Google about what's wrong with people. I had 2 spine surgeries. I had 13 epidurals. I had 2 laminectomies for amniotomies and microdiscectomies. I ended up with something called arachnoiditis. My back's fine, by the way. I ended up with arachnoiditis, which is an inflammation at the bottom of my spine. According to Google, I would be disabled within 3 months, and that was 11 years ago. So, and we have patients coming in all the time, having read all this or seeing this kind of garbage and questioning what our docs have to say. So let me wrap up here. So this was a great article I saw in the New Yorker magazine about many a nation tired of explaining things to idiots. We all have to do this. We all have to be patient. We all have to get everyone to understand. I have a doctor who came to see me a few weeks ago and said, very busy doctor, he's 547 fee tickets behind. So I called him in, and I liked the guy a lot, and I said, yada, 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 we need these fee tickets. He said, well, I can't get to them, but I'm seeing more and more patients every day. And I said, well, this isn't going to do me any good if I can't bill for them. And our rule is that you have to withhold paychecks, and I was trying to make that subtle management leadership difference of trying to explain to the doc, it will not be me who's not paying them, it will be them who's not paying them. Because we need everybody to do their fair share. But I love this article, and you should look it up if you get a chance. I mentioned earlier compensation planning. I am a freak for compensation planning. I move the bogey around as to where I want to change behavior on our management team and with every one of our docs. And I'll tell you, it works splendidly. Nobody's at the bottom of the list twice. We show all the numbers at all of our Monday night meetings. We blind their name. Every time I mention we're not going to blind names anymore, everyone's numbers go up. It's an incredible way to do it. I'm a carrot guy. I'm not a stick guy. But every now and then you have to do this. This is a dashboard I send to every doctor every month. It tells them all about their practice on one page. So I made the stupid mistake of sending it to them by email. So what they did was they came back into their office in between patients. They saw it. They quickly went to it. And they read it for about a minute or two. The phone rang. They went away. They came back another minute or two. But they never really read the whole thing. So when it came time for the pay plan meetings, my bad, they were surprised about their data. So I did something differently. I FedExed it to them on Friday night, so they got it at home on Saturday morning. They all read it, and pay plan meetings became easy. Not Rhodes Scholar stuff, but the things you have to learn and do to make sure your audience is on board. More of what we do and why, and getting them involved in their own numbers, and more objectivity and less subjectivity, except for citizenship, obviously. So I'll send this to you if you're interested in seeing it. These are the things as to how we pay our docs. There are numbers attached to all of it. The percentages, again, move to create the behavior I'm trying to create. Like I told you, it's the only part of this whole thing I ever thought I was any good at. This is the guy from Starbucks, and he's right, like making a great cup of coffee. You've got to get people involved in building a culture. If you don't have a culture, I don't care how smart you are, I don't care what you pay these docs, you are not going to make it. And culture is the thing we do the most of and spend a lot of time on, and I'm proud of that. I really, really am. So a thing about culture, and we also do a lot of classes on legacy building. You don't build your legacy when you're 60 years old. You started it 30 years ago. Build it, create it. It's your name. It's all you got. It's what you got here with. We try and get them to understand that so they don't throw. I had a doctor who threw a chart at a nurse once. Can you believe that? I can't even believe when people act that way. I went over to him, and I drove over to his office, and I said, "You threw a chart at a nurse?" He said, "Well, don't be mad. I missed." It's incredible to me how people. So he doesn't work there anymore, by the way. Okay, culture is a big deal with us, and if you don't have it in your organization, call me. I will help you build it. And that's the most important thing we've got going. We are in a group sport here, and everybody's got to play their role. So being an economist, I had to put one thing in here, and that's the tragedy of the commons, okay? Individuals acting independently and rationally according to each other's self-interest behave contrary to the best interest of the whole group. Do you understand that? It is so important to get them to understand if you're going to be only independent, don't be in a group model. You're never going to make it. And everyone is going to end up in a group model. Franklin Roosevelt said, we've always known that needless self-interest was bad morals, and we know now that it's bad economics, and it is. Terrible economics. So we can't allow that to happen. So last, just to end up, this is where we're going. This is the things we're talking about right now, is to get everybody to understand we got to get everybody in that circle. Okay, why is and why is not. Okay, we have a tough road to hoe. You need to band together. You need to join organizations, whether it's CAPG or others. You need to get the docs to understand it. You have to be transparent. Show them the numbers. Show them the numbers as often as you can. Get them to understand them. Get them to buy into them, because it's their numbers, and they need to understand that. And that's why our doctors stay. It isn't because of money. I wish it was. And that's why we're different and win whatever we win. So this is why we're in this business. I always like to end with people remembering why we do this. I show this video a lot to our docs, our management team, and our hourly staff. I think sometimes people forget why we're in this business. If we all went to work for hedge funds tomorrow, we'd make a lot more money. And it would probably be easier, but we don't. We do something that we think is important. And I think organizations like CAPG bring us together and help us remember that. They give us tools that we need to build upon what we're each individually doing. They give us forums to sit together and talk it all through. Just 1 inch of history about me. I'm the son of Holocaust survivors. I was born in Berlin. I came to this country when I was 3 years old. My parents got, if you'll pardon the French, the crap beat out of them. They were on death's doorstep 4 times. They lost 2 children to the Nazis, and they came here in the sheer hope that maybe, just maybe, with $200 to their name and didn't speak English, that my one alive brother and I might have a better life. And I get to sit here and talk to you about healthcare, which I love, on a balmy Chicago day in a free country. It's never been lost on me, and it's why I love that video so much. It's walking in somebody else's shoes that makes you understand and remember why we in healthcare have a chance to make a difference. I am privileged that you invited me here today. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Amy. I will stick around for questions. Thank you for listening. Do you have any questions? Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hi.
Tom, thank you for a wonderful, wonderful talk and just
Thank you.
amazing slides and your passion and your inspiration. So I appreciate that. I'm from California, and we've been living in managed care for a long time. I think we heard a lot of talk about bringing the doctors on board and integrating the physicians. Can you speak a little bit towards integrating hospital presidents and folks who have one leg in the fee-for-service world and one leg in managed care, and trying to figure out whether heads and beds is still the model to be at? And can you just speak to that a little bit? Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for your kind words. So, I was lucky. I had a hospital president, Tom Prisolak, who embraced where we were going. In fact, at a recent board meeting, when we were going over the size of the foundation, somebody said, "Who would have ever believed it would be this big?" And Tom Prisolak shyly put his hand up in the air, because he did. He stuck by me every day. It's a battle. It's not easy. So there are 10 of us in senior management who report to Tom. 9 of them are hospital-centric people. And it's a battle. And it's a battle you have to keep fighting. But I believe that the day is coming where it's all turning, where the emphasis and the importance on the delivery system and who does the patient have their allegiance to is coming. Also, I think the hospitals are starting to understand that without the doctors, there is no hospital. So we spent a lot of time, trying to emphasize that on the hospital side. But, you need a CEO of the hospital who understands it. If you would ever like to bring yours out to meet with us, it would be our pleasure. Thank you. Any other questions? Hi, old friend.
Follow-up question. So, a percentage of your position with revenue is capitated, and a percentage is fee-for-service, I assume that's correct?
50-50.
So how do you manage that? I mean, you don't put a different label on the foreheads of each patient. How can you reconcile 2 different incentive systems? How do you do that?
So also a good question. So years ago, there were different color charts for different payer mix. That all went away. Everyone is salaried. Everyone is paid on a formula that includes RVUs. Doesn't matter to me if you're seeing a private patient, a Medicare patient, a Medi-Cal patient, or an HMO patient. Do the right thing. It's all about do the right thing. So it's all transparent to them. They don't really know coming in what. In the old days, docs would call me up and say, I had to cancel 3 HMO patients to get 3 PPO patients. Those days are gone. Everyone is paid the same way. It doesn't matter what kind of patient it is. Thank you for asking. Hi.
Hi, Tom, thank you. This was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
One of your themes was bigger done well is better. There are other people who take the position that the risk of bigger in terms of the effort it takes to turn the Titanic compared to a speedboat would suggest that being smaller and more nimble in these times could be an advantage. And so, depending on your circumstance, if you're small, you want to be nimble. If you're part of a larger system, you want to help the captain turn the Titanic, you know, pretty quickly. But what do you do if you are small and you're in a competitive market like Los Angeles, and the large integrated health system is trying to put you out of business?
Well, good question also. Thank you for asking. So bigger done better to me is not an option. Bigger because of the world we live in, because of the population health area we're all moving into. We need more lives to spread the risk upon. We need to learn more. We need data. So being bigger is imperative. If you are smaller, okay, I'm afraid I don't have a perfect answer for you. You may be boutique enough to beat everybody around you. I don't know that. I don't know everyone's group model, but I hate to tell you this, I think smaller is going to get acquired. I really do. It's just going to be too tough to compete unless you have enough lives for a population health play, and that is where this industry is going. Sorry. Yes, sir.
I just came from a national meeting last week where we have a hot topic session, and the hot topic that got the most discussion was physician burnout. And I wonder what Cedars was doing on that topic, if anything.
So physician burnout is real. There's no two ways about it. We have a nationwide shortage of internists, so we're not able to attract people as easily as we used to. We're asking more of the internists than we ever did, so that's tough. We don't send people up to give them massages all day long. So what I'm trying to do is find other ways to reward our doctors. And for example, on the financial side, we've done things we never dreamt of doing before. We introduced a cash balance plan, so I would guarantee them some income on other dollars they could set aside in pre-tax dollars. On the their life side, I'm trying to get them more help. I'm trying to have more PAs or NPs on every floor to lighten their load a little bit. I'm trying to introduce scribes to the system because everyone's on Epic and it's difficult, and I think scribes are helping relieve some of the load. I've gone to the board and asked for a better vacation package so they could have more time off. I'm a guy who does not like to keep score. I really don't care if you have 6 weeks of vacation and you take 7, as long as your satisfaction, your quality, and you're taking care of the patients are all in order. So I try and be less regimented and give them more wiggle room and offer them more support staff and more vacation and other ways to make money. Not telling you it's the only answer, but that's what I'm doing. Thank you for asking. Done.
So with half revenue fee-for-service and half capitated here at home, generally the question is, which do you prefer? And secondly, get to the nub of the thing, which produces a higher margin on the bottom line, which is more profitable? You got both. Tell us what you think about it.
So I think the margins are the same. I don't think it's there was a day where fee-for-service was much more the day of the risk pool, which we don't have a risk pool anymore. The hospital gets paid literally the same amount of money for an HMO bed as they do for a PPO bed. As you know, everything is moving to outpatient surgery. The prices are about the same. So I don't think there's that much difference there at all. So I have no preference whatsoever. And again, being part of a not-for-profit, there is no Mr. Cedars who puts the money in their pocket at the end of the year, allows us the privilege of just doing the right thing. We give away $650 million a year in charity care. Okay? Anyone who comes to the front door, we take care of. I think the difference between a heart transplant patient who's an HMO patient and a PPO patient for reimbursement is bupkis, nothing. Yes?
Thank you for your passionate
Thank
speech. One question. You mentioned about all the pressures that the physicians...
Could you speak a little louder? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
You mentioned about all the different pressures that the physicians are facing right now. How do you see a pharmacy or a retail pharmacy helping the physicians, alleviate some of those pressures or those pains? And, how does, two entities collaborate together?
You asking how I see these minute clinics working on our behalf?
Or a role of a pharmacist, collaborating with a...
So, thank you for asking. Unlike most other medical groups, we employ 20 in-house pharmacists. We do everything from Coumadin clinics to working with each doc on generic drugs that sometimes they don't really know exist and will do the same work. I think our pharmacy program has monumentally helped who we are. And we have more pharmacists per doctor or patient than most other groups in town. It's an investment that we made that we think is extremely worthwhile and that I recommend to all of you. And by the way, anything we've got, because we are part of CAPG and that's how we operate, if you ever want to come out and see it and meet with some of our leadership in the individual areas, we're happy to do that. Our pharmacy program is a home run. We just opened up a travel clinic, another home run. We get 9,000 calls a day on, I might be getting pregnant soon. I'm going to Punta Mita, and I heard of the Zika virus. Can I go? We get these every day. So we opened up a travel clinic just to take care of those folks. Our pharmacy is a home run. So I encourage it in every group model. That's it. Good. Very nice meeting you all. Thank you.
Okay, so as we move into risk contracting, clearly those organizations doing it are going to need a variety of new competencies, management skills and leadership and vision. But at the heart of risk contracting, there is the word contract. And indeed, it's a very different kind of contract when it's budget-based or risk-sharing or capitated or the like. So to zoom in on the question of what ought to be in your contracts, we're getting into a little more technical area now. I've asked Steve Linesch, our Senior VP of Development and Administration at CAPG, to provide us a little tutorial on that. So Steve was the CEO of a large IPA in Los Angeles for a number of years, and prior to that, the COO of a fully integrated, clinically integrated system in Bakersfield, California for many years. So drawing on that experience, Steve, come on up and tell us about what we ought to have in our contracts.
Can you hear me okay? Thank you, Don. And thank you, Tom, if you're still here. I want to mention a call out to Tom and Cedars-Sinai. My wife and I are patients of theirs, and it is a phenomenal system. They certainly are very high in the patient satisfaction and certainly the clinical expertise. How they manage cost, that would have been a good question for Tom. So I think they got 2 of the 3 AAA in there. So let me get out here. I've got a clicker here somewhere. So I will be talking about, this will be sort of a speed walk through a capitated risk agreement. It'll be a speed walk because we'll touch on some of the elements. We don't have enough time to talk on all of the elements. And we'll take a little sidebars here and there as they pop up. And I should say, adding to Don's comments, that I grew up in managed care. And it's very exciting to be looking at risk and looking how CMS and the country as a whole is moving to risk. Professionally, I've known nothing but risk. I actually had my early pediatric care at Roslew's Medical Group, which was later acquired by Cigna. One of our 2 children was born at Kaiser. So this is last 14 years on the professional services side, but many years with the health plans before that. So it's very exciting to be some ways going down memory lane here, but bringing some of the principles to a much broader audience. So we're going to focus on provisions found in a professional services agreement and looking at commercial and Medicare Advantage. The one product line that is missing there is Medicaid, but in the interest of time, we're focusing on those 2 product lines this morning. And we'll follow the general construction of a capitation agreement. To start, thought it would be helpful to look at various types of reimbursement. So we've got retrospective, which is basically a fee-for-service where you get paid after the fact, and pretty much the more you provide, the more you get paid. We've got cost-based reimbursement, which is reimbursement based on allowed rates. A couple of examples there are FQHCs and some critical care access hospitals. And you've got prospective reimbursement, or looking to the future, where you've got reimbursement in advance of the provision of care. A couple examples of those are DRGs, global payment or case rates, and capitation. So this morning we'll be focusing on that last item, the capitation method. So what is capitation? It'd be fun to ask, if we had the time, to ask you to define that, because I imagine there's a lot of different ideas about it. But let's throw this one out. It's a method of payment for medical services for which you get a fixed amount. You get a PMPM, and that PMPM is static, whether you've got a lot of services provided or a minimal amount. It's prospective. As Tom mentioned, it's a method of spreading risk over a population. It's a budgeting tool. You have to work within a budget to provide the covered services that are part of your CAP agreement. It's a management tool. You can point to capitation and say, this is what we've got, physicians A through Z. We need to be aligned. And some would say it's a belief system. So let's look at how the funds flow within a capitated arrangement. So at the very top, you've got the commercial, Medicare, Medicaid, whoever is the purchaser of services. They're going to pay a premium to the health plan, and then the health plan in turn will have various arrangements from the hospital, the physician organization, and the pharmacy. I've oversimplified this, of course, for purposes of our discussion. So what we're talking about here today is that relationship between the health plan, I think I've got a pointer on here. Do I have? Between the health plan and the physician organization. I mean, some of the principles here could apply to the hospital. There would be different terminology, different financial arrangements, but some of the terms would be parallel. And we could also be talking a little bit about a integrated delivery system, if you've got the physician and the hospital as one. But we'll be focusing on that relationship between the hospital and the physician organization. I should say why I've got this slide up, because it doesn't come up again. From the physician organization down, those are typically referred to as the downstream providers. And some of the concepts we're talking about here this morning could also apply to that relationship. You know, there's a whole nother talk in itself, where you would have various capitation or fee-for-service arrangements, or bundled arrangements between the physician organization and their downstream providers. So some of the things to consider, I had a chance to meet some of you before the talk started here this morning. Some of you are very experienced in risk. Some of you are new to risk, and then probably a little bit of everything in between. I should say that, a little plug for CAPG, some of our members have been in risk for over 20 years. So the synergy, the synergy is there for among the members. Don just sent out an email this morning about our consulting group, a very distinguished group of senior managed care executives that are available. And I think this slide in particular is the history from those individuals could be very valuable to your organizations if you're needing some direction. So the pros and cons. We talked a little bit about budget. Cash flow. There's nothing that I can think more powerful from a financial side to sign that cap agreement and know that you've got a stream of revenue that's guaranteed. It's not going to be variable based on the level of services provided. So with that cash flow, you can do a number of things. You should be building your reserves for those unexpected costs. You can build your infrastructure. A lot of things you can do when you know that you've got a guaranteed income of some kind. The triple aim, customer satisfaction, bending the cost curve, and maintaining quality. Don mentioned that I was at a very innovative system in Bakersfield for 10 years. We started a health plan there in 2007, and the clinical staff was just giddy, thinking what they could do if they had the control of the entire budget. One of the dreams of theirs was to provide transportation for individuals who didn't have it, had a hard time using the public transit, didn't have a car, because we knew that transportation was a barrier to maintaining one's health. So we put together a whole voucher system that the nurses had available at their discretion to get people into the doctor's office, to get their prescriptions filled. So when you're working within that kind of system, when you know how to allocate the dollars, in this situation, it was sort of a dream come true. The cons are what happens if you're not reimbursed adequately. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but what I've done within a mature market is to contract with a number of health plans so that it's sort of like a stock portfolio where some of your stocks are going to perform and some may underperform. But on balance, you hope that you're ahead of the game. Important to look at risk readiness. From the financial standpoint, can you handle things like the payment of claims, or rather the anticipated payment of claims, the so-called IBNR, incurred but not recorded. This is a very important financial method, financial analysis, that physician organizations need to go through to make sure they've got the cash on hand to pay for future obligations. And on the operational side, we'll get into this. This actually sort of gets back to this slide where do you have your downstream providers aligned with you at the physician organization level, knowing that they've got capitation. I actually had a conversation with a PCP at one point who would send people to diagnostic radiology saying, it doesn't cost anything. It's capitated. Why wouldn't I just make referrals over and over again to diagnostic radiology? And I had to have a conversation with this PCP that, there is a capitated arrangement there, but if service goes are in excess of what they would have earned under capitation, we at the physician organization are paying for that. So you need to make sure that there's alignment, that there's between the PO and downstream providers. You need to assess the health plans for risk contracting. When you've seen one health plan, you've seen one health plan. They all have their own profiles. Some say they have their own acuity profiles. I could work with 2 different Medicare Advantage plans, for example, in one market, and it never ceases to amaze me that one cohort of patients or members could be sicker than another. And you could speculate for here at Kingdom Come on why that could be the case. Could it be the brokers and who the brokers are selling to? Could it be the neighborhoods that the members are coming from? But a big factor. And how the plans work with you. We'll get into the contract, but there's the stated agreement, and then the formal agreement, and then there's the informal agreement. And when the formal agreement is not serving you well, you need to make sure that that informal arrangement is there for you. And then let's touch briefly on business risk and insurance risk, and we'll come back to this at the end. One of my greatest mentors, Bob Severs, when I was in Bakersfield, pounded this into me. Business risk is that risk which is predictable, which you can reasonably assume under a capitation agreement. Insurance risk is that which is not predictable. Who can give me a good example of business risk? Yeah. Perfect. 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 Anybody else? I mean, we always would contrast the risk associated with senior care versus commercial care. And commercial care is really much riskier. And we would look at one service in particular. If you get a preemie baby, it can just, over even, how many members do you need to spread a preemie baby? It's mind-boggling. Business risk, one example I like is diagnostic lab. Very easy to predict diagnostic lab. So you take risk for that any day of the week. Insurance risk, high-cost injectables, transplant services, very difficult, if not impossible, to predict. So as a physician organization, you really don't want any risk for those services. So let's dive into the agreement. Again, this is going to be a speed walk, but we're going to go from definitions, PO obligations, health plan obligations, delegated responsibilities, compensation, term and termination, general provisions, and governing law. So this is basically how a capitated risk agreement between a physician organization and the health plan is laid out. Allowed rates. This will be the evaluation of covered services provided or arranged for by the physician organization. So I'll provide some definitions, I'll provide some clarification, and others I'm just including to provide context because language is so important with these agreements. Authorization, key to managing risk You'll have a list of prior authorized services that everyone needs to follow. And then you'll have a list of services that would not be on that list, which would not require an authorization. Corrective action plans, covered services. If I did a word search on my presentation this morning, covered services is probably going to pop up more than anything else because it is so central. Division of financial responsibility, which we'll get into. Emergency services, which we just mentioned. Fee-for-service agreement, members, service areas. So let's take a dive on service area for a minute. So service area is that aggregate geographic area determined by and located within a 30-mile radius. So that would be a circumference around either the medical group's main office, the hospital. It'll define it in a couple of different ways. I've had a couple of contracts where the service area is defined by a zip code. So I would highly recommend that a zip code listing, you look at that 30-mile radius and you translate that, because then you've got definition. If it's on one side of the line or the other, you're not getting into a squabble with your health plan about whether that's in area or out of area. And believe me, you've got better things to do than trying to figure out service area issues. Medical necessity is a term. Participating provider. Premium. And the PCP. So I don't hear this term a lot these days, but I still like it. The PCP really is the gatekeeper. Any one of the physician organizations, participating providers who meet the health plan's criteria for providing initial and primary care covered services to members, and for maintaining the continuity of patient care, and for initiating and coordinating referrals for covered services to members. So when you talk about burnout, somebody asked the question, you need to do everything humanly possible to keep these physicians alive and well and functioning within the system, because they are the key to success. You've got provider manual. Provider manual is a manual that's written by the health plan. Most physician organizations will have their own provider manual, but the one that is adhered to in terms of the health plan policies and procedures is their manual, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Reciprocity rate, payments made by the health plan to other physician organizations, or to the physician organization, or payments made by other capitated providers to the physician organization to other providers, and this is normally at the allowed rates. So I don't see this a lot in practice, but a lot of the plans will want to see this in the arrangement, because then you become another, if they've got 100 physician organizations contracted within a given geographic area, they're going to want to know that they've got coverage for you if members are coming from Med Group B versus your Med Group A. You need to be careful here, though, because you need to make sure that the products that are defined for this are defined for this reciprocity rate. One of the big things to think about is, does this open you up to PPO products? If you're fine with that, go ahead with the language. My recommendation is, if you're looking at an HMO product, you stay within the HMO, because PPO can be a little, you should have a specific arrangement for that. Referral services, the employer group agreement, and evidence of coverage. You should have full access. These are documents that are held by the employer group and the health plan. And there are occasions when you need to look at the specifics. They will sometimes design products, they're all in sales at the health plan level, and they can get crazy on designing products that may not be in your best interest. When you get into the commercial world is filled with products, and you need to sometimes go back to the source documentation to know what they've sold, and if that is truly within your wheelhouse, or if that is something that should have been outside the capitated services and urgently needed services. Let's look at a couple of Medicare Advantage definitions. We've got the CMS agreement, we've got the Medicare Advantage plan, we've got the Medicare Advantage members who are members of the plan. We've got the agreement is the agreement between CMS and the plan. We've got the monthly CMS payment to the plan. And then we've got Medicare Advantage revenue to the physician organization. And then under that, you've got net Medicare revenue. I mean, this could be a whole presentation in itself. The amount of variability in this section can be extremely high. How that net revenue gets defined is unique, almost unique to the health plan. There's model language that it would be nice to use and impose upon your contracting process if you've got it. If you need to look at modifying existing contract language, it's good to know what the model looks like to try and get as close as possible to it, but a high amount of variability here. So let's take a look at physician organization obligations. And for these I've provided, and you'll get these in the slides after the presentation, I have provided what I think is good model language. Provide or arrange for covered services. So you take that capitation in, and you're expected to provide this bundle of services. And that bundle of services is what is defined in the DOFR. So it's an obligation. You've got professional standards which need to be maintained at all levels of your physician organization, within all your contracted primary care, specialty, and ancillary care providers. You've got licensure. So this would be licensure as required by your state. In California, there's quite a bit of licensure that we have to adhere to. And in this section, I would recommend language that refers to, just as a sort of a blanket referral to the appropriate licensure, rather than listing all the licensure requirements in your agreement, because that will tend to be not current. And then it frees you up from doing all sorts of cross-referencing between what the physician, what the agreement cites, and what is required at the state level or the federal level. Physician organizations, participating providers licensure. So it's your responsibility at the physician organization level to maintain, to make sure that all your contracted physicians have the appropriate licensure. Providing participating provider information. A lot of activity going on this topic in California right now, but the PO shall provide the health plan with a complete list of its participating providers, together with the provider-specific information required by health plan for credentialing and for administration. I mean, for as long as I've been in managed care, this has been kind of the bugaboo. It is so imperfect. The road to success, to solutions on this is just littered with failed attempts. We think we've got one in California that may make it to the success category. This is where the relationship between the PO and your health plan becomes absolutely critical. Physicians usually wait to the last, oftentimes will wait to the last minute to inform you of any changes. Oftentimes they don't know what the changes are until the last minute. So it's just a very challenging process. You've got to agree to a very prescribed set of rules within the agreement, but then when in practice, it's, you're dealing with real life. So additions are usually required within 60 days, a 60-day notice. Terminations usually required within a 90-day notice to the health plan. It's important to note here that even if a physician terminates, the physician organization is still responsible for that care. So there's, you've contracted for a basket of covered services. And your responsibility is to go out and make sure you've got a contracted network or an employed network of physicians to provide all those covered services. And if somebody drops out, if you've got a key cardiology practice that drops out, you've still got cardiology as your part of your covered services. So it's that's really the nature of one of the principles of capitation. Subcontracts with participating providers. Some model language here. The best advice I can give in this area is to have as standard a contract as possible. The plans will oftentimes want to see examples of your contracts, or maybe all your contracts, and if you can give them one or two versions and say, this represents contracts used in our subcontracted network, you're that much further ahead in the game. But the reality is you've got to get creative most of the time. You come up with arrangements where one has very little resemblance to another, and it can be a challenge. But if you can maintain some consistency among agreements, you're better off. And I would also recommend, and I'll get into this I think a little bit more, but the health plans will sometimes request changes to your contracts, or that certain provisions are included in your contracts. To go out and renegotiate your subcontracts, some of which you don't want to touch because they're working perfectly, and one little change could open up 10 other changes. So you really want to be careful about not giving the plans too much control over your subcontracts. And the acceptance and transfer of members. The physician organization shall accept all members who select or who are assigned to the PO and who live or work within your service area. So it's all comers, no selection process whatsoever. They're free to choose you if you're in the service area. And encounter data, the key to substantiating what you do, evaluating what you do, usually submitted on the 15th of each month. And the wording here is the utilization data pertaining to covered services which are provided, and the utilization data pertaining to covered services which are paid. So those are describing services that are capitated, that are not necessarily paid, and those for which you have a fee-for-service arrangement. And the right to reassign members. This is language that I always makes my heart skip a little bit. The members, it's always, for me at the physician organization level, it's always a question, whose members are they? Are they the health plan's members? Are they the physician organization's members? I mean, technically, they are the health plan members. But if you've been serving somebody for 10 years it's hard not to think of those individuals as your members. And oftentimes that issue doesn't come up. It really comes up only when, well, it came up for me in a big way back in Bakersfield. We started our own health plan. We started with a Medicare Advantage plan. And we really, some of the MA plans we were contracted with didn't want to stay. So we had, we needed membership to get the plan going. And we put out a very aggressive effort to keep as many members as we could. We ended up keeping 85% of our members. But we had to work around this contract language. Basically, you work through your physicians. Your physicians are not bound to some of this terminology. So language that is required doesn't come into play unless you've got situations like what I was talking about. And I guess, so if you are failing as a physician organization, they can transfer members. And this is a contract to provide services. This is not there is no guarantee of membership for these contracts. So this is another reminder, that's where my heart skips a beat also, that there's no guarantee that they will market on your behalf and have members sign up. There's just no guarantee there. You've got the right to terminate the physician-patient relationship. I don't see this happening very often, but it's important when it does happen, and it will happen. There's a process that you go through, but you may terminate the professional relationship with a member with the health plan's consent in accordance with the procedures set forth in the provider manual. This would be for a member who's just maybe just totally non-compliant with their course of care, and you're just at odds and need some help. So let's get into some of the health plan obligations. Marketing, enrollment of assigned members, and eligibility. So some people say that if you had to crystallize the responsibilities of a health plan into 3 or 4 categories, here they are. They market, they bring members in, they enroll the members, they assign them to physician organizations, and they maintain eligibility. So if you're thinking of you doing your own health plan, and these are the only functions that you're not performing at the physician organization level, which for very advanced physician organizations, that could be the case, then you just figure out how to do this. Of course, they do a lot more, but if you want to really crystallize them, reduce them to a very limited set of functions, these would be them. They also administer and provide data, and that's all very well defined in the health plan obligations section. They maintain a provider manual. They are responsible for benefit design and interpretation of the designs that they put together, and the coverage, any dispute on coverage decisions related to benefit design. So they do maintain the provider manual. The provider manual is referenced in the contract, so by default, it is part of the contract. So any negotiations that go on of material value in the provider manual should be mutually agreeable between the health plan and the physician organization. That wasn't always the case. The provider manual at one point was some document that everybody referred to but didn't necessarily have to adhere to. So it is considered a document that needs to be looked at as diligently as the agreement itself. They're responsible for case management, carve-out program management, and out-of-area services management. Case management is, somebody could design a new, oncology management program, and they want to come in and manage their patients. Carve-out program management, a good example there again with high-cost services is transplant. So they could have a whole transplant team devoted to managing those services. And out-of-area medical, of course, you as a physician organization don't in Seattle, Washington, you don't have a network in Boise, Idaho, and hopefully they do, or they can access some level of network coverage there. So it makes sense for that arrangement to be there. Getting these members back in can sometimes be a challenge. But then your relationship with the health plan becomes paramount when that kind of activity is going on. Delegated responsibilities. So when you take capitation, along with that comes delegation of key responsibilities. And the main ones are medical management, also known as utilization management, credentialing, and claims processing. It's usually those three. It's usually in that order. And the delegated services are detailed in exhibits, and we'll have some examples of those later on. And the payment for delegated activities is included in the capitation, normally included in the capitation. I've seen examples where certain, take medical management, where actually take a hospitalist program, for example, a very expensive program. I was in a situation where we needed to get one up and running. We didn't have the funds. So we worked together with a health plan that they would fund the hospitalist program. It was funded on a PM basis, a per member per month basis. So that was one example, to my experience, where you've got a separate payment for delegated activities. But for the most part, they're included in the capitation. And there's usually a section where if you're de-delegated for some reason, if your claims processing, if you're getting out to 90 days on your claims processing and you're just not cutting it in your ability to pay claims on time, and somebody has to come in and help with that service, they're going to charge you for that service. And oftentimes it's a % of capitation. So you can see, I never got to that level with me in the past, but the language will be there in the case of where you are delegated and what they'll charge you for assuming any of these services. So let's look a little bit at compensation. You've got capitated covered services. You've got capitation payments. You've got carve-out or non-capitated compensation, co-payments, retroactive adjustments, and eligibility guarantee. So I think we've talked a little bit about the first two. There will be covered services on that third bullet that are not capitated, but for which you are delegated and that you need to manage. So for those, you will have compensation, and that'll be spelled out in a little bit. You've got co-payments. So that is a form of income, but this will vary by model type. If you're an IPA, that's income to your contracted physicians. If you're a medical group, that's income coming in directly to your medical group. And so your compensation, here we're getting into downstream compensation. Your downstream compensation should incorporate those co-payments. Retroactive adjustments. This can be a very contentious area. The federal employees health benefits plan has what seems like virtually no limit in terms of how far they can go back. But typically it's 90 days. On a commercial plan, certainly it is 90 days. So that would occur if, for some reason, they discover an individual who was thought to be eligible but turned out to be ineligible. So they'll go back 90 days, and your cap will be adjusted for that period of time. Now, if one of your assigned members has had services during those 90 days, you're out of pocket some cost. So I strongly recommend that you have an eligibility guarantee. It's fairly common, but not always there. And as the provider of care, you're in the best position to work with the individual to see if they've got other insurance or to go to a cash pay of some sort. But if you are not successful in getting reimbursement for that person who turned out to not be eligible at the time of service, there needs to be some guarantee at the health plan level that they will be responsible for service. Just makes sense. So there's, so very important, this gets used, to my experience, all the time. A couple of other incentive compensation, levels of compensation, incentive programs, including withholds, hospital incentive program, and pharmacy incentive program. I would advise against withholds. Sometimes withholds are involved in quality measures. Sometimes they're involved in meeting certain utilization targets. Not that popular in today's world. Hospital incentive program, Tom mentioned that you don't see those very much anymore. I would agree with him. And pharmacy incentive program, this is white hot right now. This is an area where a lot of the plans think that the physician organizations can bend the cost curve, and they're very interested in what you can do to increase the cost of the use of generics. So a lot of incentive arrangements being put together on that. And I include low enrollment protection for those who are starting out. That's an arrangement where you can get into a comparison. You can do what's called a true-up. So if you think to spread the risk, you need 3,000 members to adequately spread the risk. You can enter into an arrangement where you'll get paid capitation on those members, and then every 6 to 12 months, you will look at your capitation, you will look at your allowed amount, and if your allowed amount is, say, higher than you would have gotten paid under capitation, they will reimburse you for the excess costs. I mean, the idea is that you are not yet reaping the law of averages, and it's going to take you a little bit longer to get there. It's a program that's fairly easy to administer. For a newbie to capitation, it's very comforting to know that you're not going to be taking significant losses at the beginning to get you into this capitated arrangement. I've seen it work in practice a number of times, and it's a nice feature to have. Some additional compensation areas: individual stop loss. You've got professional services is the main one. The plans will oftentimes offer you this level of coverage, or they'll allow you to go out into the open market and buy it. I've never found the plans rates to be very competitive. I've usually gone out to the open market. And where you put your attachment point on the individual stop loss is largely a function of your appetite for risk and the size of your organization. I've seen it anywhere from 5,000 to 25,000. Collection of charges from third parties. I would make sure that you have full access to the dollars that you collect from TPL. TPL can be a long, arduous process, but you're fully entitled to it at the physician organization level. Sometimes the plans will want to take a cut, but if you're doing all the work, if you provided the services, you can be the one who's motivated to collect and entitled to collect. And coordination of benefits, or COB. I've set up units where they can be amazingly productive. I've seen revenue on this area, depending on the geography and the line of business, where you can, COB can be up to 9% of capitation. So this is really found money on top of your monthly PMPM that you should have. You know, if you want to work it, it should be yours. Term and termination, not the funnest topic to talk about with the plans. On the term, the duration, it's usually a 2 to 3 year period. It's an interesting dynamic. The plans always want the longer period. The physicians always want, you know, a more reasonable period. So you just have to strike a balance. You know, they want to set that cap, and they want to set the term for as far out as they can see and move on to the next deal. You'll have a termination of agreement with cause, without cause, notice of cure period, and term with intent to renew. I threw this one in there because, you know, I've never seen language on this. I'd love to see language on this, where one of the common methods for renewal is to term the contract. So it puts everybody on a calendar. And the plans hate it because, depending on the state, there's all sorts of filing requirements. Mariella's smiling. There's all sorts of filing requirements that you have to go through. And the plan and the state know that you're not going to term, but you've got to go through the procedures. So I would love to see something like this that allows you to have like a pseudo term of some sort. But, you know, actually maybe that wouldn't accomplish what you need with the plans. So, but, you know, a thought. General provisions, the plan and the PO are they're independent contractors, not responsible for each other's liabilities. Actually, the only place where they're not totally independent is if the physician organization is not paying claims. But other than that, totally independent. Members' appeals and grievances, disputes. The plans usually leave disputes up to, they stay completely out. Although with the exception of claims. So that claims, if there's a claims issue, they will step in. And I'm sorry, I was talking about the fourth bullet, disputes between health plan and provider organization. That's where claims disputes will be moderated by the plan. The plan can step in. In an assignment, I would highly recommend that the assignment language is mutual. This is where the one area where you can go in and you can almost guaranteed you can look at the friendliness of an agreement on the assignment language. And you can see, is it mutual or is it totally oriented to the plan? And I would certainly recommend that be mutual, so that the plan can move on to other ownership and the PO can move on to other ownership, and you've still got an agreement. Amendments, solicitation of health plan members or subscriber groups, part of the general provisions. I mentioned the amendments to the provider manual that are just as important as amendments to or modifications to the agreement, all mutually agreeable. Solicitation of health plan members or subscriber groups. So this is where they specify that you cannot directly solicit without approval of the plan any of their subscriber groups or members who they consider they own. But usually language that doesn't come into play unless you're terminating a relationship. Governing law and regulatory requirements, required parts of an agreement. The no billing of members, or the members hold harmless provision. So in some ways, this is the heart of the members' rights under a capitated agreement. That the members will never be balance billed for any perceived cost that was not covered. They're totally held harmless You would never see surprise billing, for example, for an HMO member. They would never be left alone in a surprise billing arrangement. And this holds true even if the health plan goes out of business. So that gives a level of seriousness or gravity to this feature within a HMO agreement. Let's get into attachments and exhibits. You'll have one attachment for each product with specific definitions, responsibilities, and compensation. So anything that was not mentioned previous in the body of the contract would be specified in the attachments. You'll have a list of delegated responsibilities, and you'll have the DOFR. So let's look at some of the elements of a commercial capitation attachment. You'll have your base capitation, and for that you'll have a per member per month. And how that gets determined is largely by negotiation. I think it's key to know sort of what the market rate is. In a mature market, it's fairly easy to make that determination. In a less mature market, not so easy. That's the per member per month that you need to live within. That sets your budget. It's largely negotiation, to my experience. And so you'll get a base amount, and that'll be adjusted by 3 factors: age, gender, and benefit plan. So I've included just some sample calculations or some sample numbers here. So you're looking at a member, a female, from 18 to 19. She'll get a age adjustment factor of that 0.5, and a male will get a 0.3 in the 30 to 34 age range. So that will be multiplied by, the base will be multiplied by that. And then for one of the benefit factors is copay. So you see a $10 copay is about 1. So they figured that's probably the average. And a $15 copay, you'll see a reduction. So that's considered income to the physician organization, and there'll be a corresponding decrease in the capitated amount. Medicare Advantage capitation. This is typically this is oftentimes a percent of premium received by the health plan. And the premium is the gross CMS revenue, which would be parts A and B, facility and professional as a total. Part D is separate for the pharmacy. And then the plan would calculate a net CMS revenue. And that's totally defined by the health plan, and those definitions tend to be very unique by the health plan. So here's an example of a delegation grid. Here you've got medical management, case management. With the delegation grids, just some preliminary comments that when a contract comes in or a renewal comes in, for the renewal side, these grids are being updated constantly. And what I would do is just take a copy of the grid and I would give it to that functional area within the organization and have them review it, bless it, comment. These are often totally negotiable. And they really define all the detail of those delegated responsibilities to the physician organization. So here's an example of case management, reporting frequency, no less than quarterly, health plan oversight, you do initial on-site, and then you do an annual. So they don't want to see you too often on this Credentialing will have a grid. I use the example here, primary source verification, similar reporting frequency, and plan oversight. Claims processing, they will, I use an example here of staffing. It's just one of many examples. They'll do an initial on-site, and we'll come back in periodically to monitor your staffing. So let's look at health plan allowed rates for non-capitated services. So for commercial, they'll either be at a % of Medicare or a % of the health plan fee schedule. I recommend a % of Medicare. In fact, I recommend 100% of Medicare. Oftentimes they will want to come in at a lower % of Medicare. I would argue for 100%. And oftentimes they will come in at their health plan fee schedule. So their health plan fee schedule, unless you know it extremely well, there's a lot of science that goes into these health plan fee schedules. They skew it, they weight it, they look at it constantly to try and manipulate it to their advantage. So if I sound a little paranoid, it's for good reason. I mean, pretty much everybody knows what the Medicare fee schedule is. It's not perfect. We know that it has weighting issues, but everybody knows it. So if you're comfortable with the health plan's fee schedule, go with it. If you don't have the resources, if you don't have the market intelligence to know what they may have done to that fee schedule, I would choose the Medicare fee schedule. I would highly recommend that. And for Medicare Advantage, the plans will sometimes want you at a % of Medicare for that too. But I would argue strongly that if it's a Medicare member, then that's at 100% of Medicare. End of conversation. Division of financial responsibility. This is the so-called DOFR that where you've got all the service categories listed, and they contain the rows, and then you've got financial responsibilities in the columns. This is the first actually educational session in this series was a division of financial responsibility presentation that I gave in March. So there's a website that you can look and refer to where you can download the audio and the visual associated with that presentation. So they're specific, the service categories are specific to place of service, and one example is emergency, where in area will be your financial responsibility, out of area will be the plan's responsibility. And the financial responsibility, this seems pretty basic, but it's amazing when you've got a number of products, how many times you challenge each other inside an organization on who's financially responsible for a given claim. So if it's the PO's responsibility, the PO pays the claim. If it's the hospital incentive program or shared risk program, the plan pays the claim. And if it's the health plan's responsibility, they're paying the claim. And here's one example of an emergency room as a service category. A physician organization, hospital incentive program, and health plan are the column headers, and you can see how the services, the risk for services gets assigned. So let's go back to the pros and cons. I don't know if for you who are experienced in risk, this has probably been a bit of a refresher. For you who are newbies to risk, I hope I haven't scared you off. But again, we've got the pros and cons of budget, cash flow, ability to achieve the triple aim, risk readiness, look at your organization, figure out if you've got the financial controls in place to make it work, if you've got the operational alignment with your downstream providers to share your journey on a capitated risk arrangements. And have you got business risk and insurance risk in the right buckets, that you're not taking on too much for that capitated rate, and that the appropriate levels of risk on the insurance side are on the plan, or with the plan. So at that point, I'd be open to taking any questions. Sure.
I'm just curious, where does risk adjustment fit into setting the base PM payment? I saw in your slide an adjustment for age and sex, but how do we think about risk adjustment in the context of establishing one of these agreements? Thanks.
Good question. The question was, how do we incorporate risk adjustment into the reimbursement? Well, risk adjustment is very well defined on the Medicare Advantage reimbursement, right? So you've got your RAF score, and that all gets incorporated into the reimbursement at the plan level. And then if you're at a percent of premium with your Medicare Advantage, then it's automatically adjusted in your capitated amount. Now, risk is playing more and more into the commercial world as well. It's not as nearly as well defined, so it's probably, you're going to see some variability between one plan and another. But you're right. So the physician organizations have very well developed coding units to make sure that all the appropriate diagnosis codes are applied on every claim. And that is a process where it needs to be refreshed every single year. So very, very big part of a physician organization's responsibility and their primary care physicians. So, yeah. Don, yeah.
Health plan calls you up and says, I hereby want to give you a contract at X dollars per member per month. How do you know, you referred earlier to whether you are in a sophisticated market or not, how do you know if that's anywhere near sufficient to cover your costs and generate a profit for you? What do you advise newbie groups moving into risk when they receive that phone call?
Good question. There have got to be some consulting services that are out there, but maybe, I would divide it up into cost categories as much as possible. So if you have a given population that you've been serving over an extended period of time, and you've got data on that population that you can extract, the challenge is that you haven't had assigned members. So without assignment, you don't know if they're coming to you for all their services. But if you've got some level, I think as an individual organization, to do the analysis yourself would be extremely difficult. I think it would be extremely difficult. Because you don't have, without an assignment of members, you've got no lock-in. You don't know the total budget. In some ways, you have to go out and look at comparative values that others are receiving, or you have to look at aggregate databases that would have some geographic variation, some age variation. I think the most you could do would be to estimate the number of members who would come in and the age dispersion of those members. And you could present that to somebody who knows the market better than you do, who knows the reimbursement at a cap level better than you do, and say, here's a profile of my expected population. What do you think the cap rate would be for that profile? That would be my advice. Yeah.
A question about the differences in managed care. I mean, you've spent a lot of time over your career in managed care, and what do you see as the similarities or differences between the way it has been over the decades and the manifestations of it today? I mean, there's new terms, but some of the new terms seem to be old terms. Is there some pieces of this that are new and different from what you saw, say, from prior decades?
I would say regulation. I mean, 20 years ago, there was very little regulation. The contracts were, a third the size of what they are now. We didn't have anything along the lines of risk adjustment. So the data collection efforts to support risk adjustment are significantly increased. I think the burden on the solo practice to participate in some of these programs. I mean, some primary care physicians thrive in it, but but some are just being driven out. They can't tolerate the oversight. I think certainly the quality and the customer satisfaction has increased as a result of some of the oversight. But I would say it's the level of oversight that is so dramatically different from then and now. So,
Steve, do you have thoughts for us about how any of your remarks or recommendations would be altered? Or what's the difference if a physician organization wants to take not just professional risk, but institutional risk as well?
Well, if you've got the moxie, which you do, no, I think you should take it all. I think not just hospital risk, take pharmacy risk. There's so much magic that can be worked on pharmacy. I mean, there's way to purchase drugs at extremely low amounts that a plan could never have access to. On the hospital side, if you've got a very strong hospital partner, the organization I was with for 4 years before CAPG, Torrance Memorial Health System, we took hospital risk on everything. And there were ups and downs, but for the most part, it was very welcome. But we knew we had a fairly closed system. We did have trouble with it with the out of area, but I would take it in a heartbeat if you've got the infrastructure to manage it. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, so I wanted to mention, a couple housekeeping there. We are able to validate for parking for anybody who drove here, so it gives you a lower rate than you would ordinarily. And the machine is just out to the left as you're walking out. So I think we've got a 15-minute break, and we'll be back for our next presenter. So thank you very much.